This is The Change Physician, episode 185. Welcome back to The Change Physician. I am Melissa Cady, the Challenge Doctor, with my co-host, Dr. Kevin Cuccaro. And today's conversation, we're going to talk a little bit about a book that both of us read. And of course, Kevin is so good at taking notes and marking pages and has lots of great things to review. So did you want to show the book to our listeners or watchers, I guess?
And I want to put the caveat out here is this was sort of early in my learning path. So the book is Switch, How to Change When Change is Hard. This is by the two brothers, Chip Heath and Dan Heath.
Yep.
And this book actually doesn't have the markings that the books that I read now have. I have some, this is back when I was putting like pieces of paper in it. Now I'm a much more active reader. So totally off topic, but when I read a lot when I was little, and I hated, this is so weird, I hated library books because you didn't know where people touched them. Like if they taught, and I want them brand new, and I wouldn't mark my books. Like I kept them perfect. And these were predominantly fiction at the time. And that transitioned into fiction, and I was very, very hesitant to do anything. I was like, oh, you don't mark a book. And that's just like stupid. Like it's your book. And the other part is I love the library now because it was a book you're going to read once. Why in the world would you keep it? And so most fiction books I don't want to buy. And nonfiction books, particularly ones that I'm really interested in, I mark the hell out of them now. And I like tag pages and stuff. So this is easy. This was early because you can tell I didn't underline everything. But it was really foundational to me. In fact, on my website, one of my websites, I actually marked this down as something that everybody should read. And early in kind of the dissatisfaction, we've talked about our stories with medicine and particularly with our specialties. Mm-hmm. When you're looking and you're frustrated about why, we go into medicine to help people get well. And the focus of medicine is absolutely positively not on helping people get well. It's completely sick care based. And the more I sort of looked into, well, how do people get well long-term? And you see that the majority of it is behavioral and lifestyle change. So I was thinking then, well, then how do we instigate, or how do we as physicians enable and facilitate change in individuals towards behavioral and lifestyle interventions? Right. And I think I bought this in an airport, which is one of my favorite places to buy books because they always have the good ones. It seems like there's always these good business books. And this, I remember opening this and started reading it, and I was like, holy crap, this is why healthcare doesn't work. Because this is all about the topic on behavioral and lifestyle change, which is very similar to habit and facilitating behavioral change. Mm-hmm. And the way that we do it in medicine is by information. And it is well known to all the people who understand this stuff that information doesn't work. I didn't know that. So I'm like, oh, if I just give people more information, they're going to change behavior. No, they won't. And if you're working in your office and you think, why is it that my diabetics never file my diet guidelines? Or how come my hypertensives, I'm just getting medications. I keep saying you need to lose weight and exercise and nobody does it. It's because you're just giving them information. And that is not how you change behavior. Mm-hmm. And so what Chip Heath and Dan Heath did with this book is they really took a lot of really like the science, and then they codified it and simplified it in a way that is very accessible. So when you're looking at behavioral change, you can get really, really complex in there, and you start looking at things like the theory of planned behavior and a lot of the research out there. And you're like, well, how in the world do I apply it? This book kind of takes this stuff and makes it sense. Now they stole an analogy, which some people may be aware of, where they call it the rider, the elephant, and the path. Mm-hmm. And that it's crucial to understand that is an analogy. It's not exactly how your brain works per se, but it's a good way to kind of visualize and apply this information that you have cognitive control and willpower. You have sort of this emotional beast, which is almost your automatic behaviors. And then you have the environment, which is the path in. And if you think of terms in behavioral change in these three categories, you got this rider, who's that cognitive control that directs your attention. He's sitting on this elephant, and for brief periods of time, he can actually control where the elephant goes. Mm-hmm. But the elephant is by far the more powerful creature. it's going to go at some point. If the rider, drifts off to sleep or whatever, that elephant is going to go wherever the hell it wants to go, wherever is pleasurable for the elephant is going to be. And then lastly is the environment. And the environment is basically the path that elephant is on. And so the elephant is going to, you got the easiest way to create or to pursue behavior is if the rider knows where he's going. If the elephant wants to go there and the path is clear, it doesn't have to push through any trees, doesn't have to stumble on any rocks or anything like that.
Yeah.
And where information goes as an intervention is directed towards the rider. It's sort of like giving the rider a piece of map or say, hey, need to go to this place. But the rider has such little long-term stamina is why it tends to fail. So they talk a lot about motivating the elephant. How do you get that elephant to go where it needs to go? Yeah. And so the biggest interventions then become is the finding reasons why, finding this kind of emotional tug or pull or drive to pursue it, to make it kind of part of who you are. That's another kind of, that your identity is this. So the elephant, I'm the elephant that goes down these steep hills, or I'm the elephant that hikes on the sand versus goes through the forest. And then the other one that they talk about a little bit, not quite as much as some other books do. And the more I've read over the years, the more I think is really important is the environment. Like, how do you actually then promote an environment that makes it such that the elephant, and by then the rider, can go the direction that you overall would like them to go to quickly, easily, and more efficiently. So great book, and lots of stories and examples out of it. And unsurprisingly, some of which are from healthcare.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about just the environment and a lot of things that when people are trying to coach people and basically trying to create an environment that doesn't have a lot of resistance or hurdles, and make it as easy as possible. But also, I'm not sure, I can't remember as far as when you create a community of that where you have, I guess, multiple riders that have learned those things. I can't remember if they went into that.
But in community is like kind of growing your people, and that's more of an elephant maneuver, because you're creating a pattern, like
you're appealing to the elephants.
You're appealing to the
connection.
Elephants, the herd. You're hitting to that herd more than anything else.
Yeah, I think that's a huge anchor too. But even digest when you talk about the rider kind of loses its stamina, like creating these little digestible little small goals. And there's things, tiny habits. There's all these things out there that help to deal with that. But it's funny because when I first was recalling, when you read several books that have similar kind of like foci, it's easy to forget if this was, the analogy. That was actually the metaphor. When you said that, it made me realize, oh, I did finish that book. That was, that was, it was something when they started giving the healthcare examples that you could apply it. And I think it's a worthwhile read. Especially if you go back through it and maybe dissect it or make notes or an index card, and try to apply it to whatever work you're doing. And even personally, it makes you more aware of the different areas that can maybe be hindering your progress.
Yeah, and I just wanted to be, one thing that's super important to me is they took unabashedly and they credited the rider and elephant analogy from Jonathan Haidt, who's a psychologist at the University of Virginia, apparently wrote the Happiness Hypothesis, which is a book I haven't read, which I probably should read at some point. But that's his analogy, and I just bring that up because I always hate it when people
claim it as their own.
And they're not claiming it as their own, but
no.
I think most of the time if people say rider, elephant, path, etc., they think a lot of people think about, I think, this particular book rather than Haidt, and maybe it's just because they expanded it or whatever. But
isn't that, I think once there's a metaphor that really resonates with human beings, like, utilizing it and just giving people credit, I mean, I think it's still a worthwhile, I mean, unless you can come up with a better one.
No. I think is the best way to do it is just to make sure that people attribute whoever that it's initially from, which they did.
Yeah.
And the other advantage, simplification. I just love simplification. I know it's shocking. Because, complexification, people can make things super difficult. A 42-page step list on how to do something will serve. The only person that serves is the person who actually made that checklist. Anybody who takes a process and makes it more confusing and difficult, in general, I would say, again, that serves the individual. You kind of look at services and people say, well, this is so hard to do, and you'll never understand it, and blah, blah, blah. You need me. That's a good way to actually get yourself clients for something, as compared to simplification, which is almost in a way of can be, I don't want to say career, but it definitely is a harder path to provide funding with, right? If you teach other people they can do it, that's a lot harder to do.
Well, it makes me think about the whole world of pain.
Oh,
How
yeah.
do you is simplifying pain enough? I mean, we all know that it takes time to like integrate and fully and truly understand. Like if you are in pain, there's constantly a reassessment, reevaluation, but the simplicity, I think, is part of I guess some staples of like how to think about it, so that you can apply a healthier approach to dealing with your pain. How would you say that?
That's a whole different can of worms. That's what I would say to that, because the problem with pain,
it's not a step-by-step process.
It's not a step-by-step process, and you could simplify pain, but in the process of simplifying what pain is and what pain isn't, you fundamentally have to start changing beliefs about pain itself, which is an extraordinarily difficult thing to do. So from that standpoint, when we're just kind of looking at simplified, if you have a simplified but wrong understanding of a process, it becomes very easy to just listen to what people want and give it to them. And so in the pain world, that things like epidural steroid injections and every single intervention that is done for persistent pain, essentially, surgery when the pain is predominantly, when the problem is pain predominant, we're not talking, muscle atrophy or functional deficits and anything like that. Those become really, really easy. In a similar way, not to pick a nudge on physicians, when people say, oh, health, this supplement is going to make it easier for you. What's the hot new one is
or diet stuff,
or diet things, they're when they're just saying is this is easy. They're kind of in a lot of ways appealing to the elephant, this emotion that you want, because the emotion just wants that elephant wants the simple, easy thing that kind of lines up with what the elephant wants, really.
And the rider can get there quick,
easy. The rider's like, hey, this looks right, because the rider's not really thinking clearly. But it may not work,
Yeah.
So we're sort of splitting here, because there's the path towards designing and implementing behavior change, where we're looking at kind of aligning the rider, the elephant, and the path together. And then on the other side, you have this kind of evil flip side of the coin, where it's marketing, where the fastest way to profit is to make sure that the service or product that you're offering already lines up with someone's elephant, rider, and path as it stands. So it has nothing to do with getting that entity to where it would, quote unquote, be best for them, the healthiest place and space for them,
destination, but
instead aligning your marketing materials along those same three things to you. And then this is sort of sales and marketing is sort of it's the super powerful entity that can be used for good reasons and as well as it can be bad reasons. And the fastest way to use it is to use it in the wrong way, where you're just taking people who have the problem have a specific problem that is a fundamental issue that they're driven to kind of want to have it go away. So
Yeah.
weight loss is a big one, pain would be a big one. And then the fastest path, that's using the word, the fastest link that you can build for them to see that this is quick, easy, and accessible for them, even if it doesn't work really well.
Yeah. Well, you hear all the time in the sales and marketing, you've done even more education in that. But even the things that I've come across, they always ask, know your avatar, know your customer, and what are the pain points? I mean, not obviously just pain, but what's the pain points? And if you can appeal to that, whether it's, fear, anxiety, pain, all these things that they want to get rid of, and you can do it quickly, like you said. I mean, you can manipulate that if you don't have integrity.
Well, in the ideal world, in the way it should be, your service or product should solve that fundamental problem. Most of what's marketed out there does not, though. And I would put this in the health and wellness space. The quick and easy solutions that people tend to market and align things because, they looking at like the writer is, so the way marketing tends to go, instead of understanding rider, elephant, and path in that order, it's elephant, rider, path.
Mm-hmm.
So they stir your emotions. They kind of generate these feelings of dissatisfaction. They get this elephant, this vast emotional beast, all charged up, and they do that by, touching your beliefs and aligning with your beliefs and questions of identity and da. And then they reinforce that by rider-based maneuvers, which is sort of your cognitive function, by providing some sort of rationale and justification for it on why it should work. And then lastly, the path is, well, click here. Anything that you can do to auto load, click this button. So a single click sell, and then there's upsells, single click upsells on that. Anything that makes the actual actions that are needed in that sales process easy and quick to do is the faster way to sell, right? You don't want to cause any sort of disruption in getting that elephant ready, and then the riders being carried along with it. And then you want a real quick path. So I guess you can also look at this if you want to be, it's a very good marketing book as well. So outside of behavioral change, it's kind of understanding this stuff actually will amplify your ability to market and sell.
Yeah, and it makes me think of those long form letters that they do on emails when they get kind of someone's email address and they start appealing. They have more time to appeal to all these things.
Yeah, direct response. So that's direct response marketing, and in a long form sales letter, it makes me laugh because a long form sales letters is the same thing as an infomercial, which is the same thing as email marketing in these long form, and the kind of sequential path. And people are like, I hate those. They don't work. Yes, they do. The reason that specific sales message didn't work for you is because it wasn't targeted at you.
Right.
If they didn't work, people would not do them.
Right.
And yeah, it is kind of fascinating though. But you can see this in the breakdowns and in almost all sales and marketing, you're always looking at sort of these three things of this emotional kind of beast, the elephant, how to get that and primarily charge it, and then the rationalization, which is second, which would be the rider, and then lastly is just making things easy. Just we want to make in general. So sometimes you want to actually make it harder, but most of the time you want to make it very, very easy for people.
Yeah. No, I think I don't really have anything to add to that. Just from
let me because we've kind of talked around the book. I'm just going to give a couple examples of each of these categories, just in case they're not very clear. These are directly from the book. I would again advise it, particularly if you're in healthcare and if you're anything where you're interested in helping people get well or interested in behavioral change. This is a great first place to start, even though it's about 10 years old now. So for the writer, and we're talking about kind of this cognitive, the rationale creature sitting on top of this thing, things that you want to look at as bright spots. So, and what bright spots are things that are already working. So if you're trying to think about some sort of behavioral change, look for the successes of either people, organizations, or other things that are where you want to be. Like, so once you have that and you can see these bright spots, then you can focus on them. Things are not nebulous anymore. So other things is script. They like this script the critical moves. And what that means to script the critical moves is the science of kind is kind of like pre-decision making. So if you have to think of every step as you do it, it becomes very, very cognitively demanding. The writer gets tired very, very quickly. So things that you can do to kind of prep in advance is to write down, actually literally to script out the behavior that you want to change and the steps that are needed to do it. Other things would be things like if-then statements, which is
Oh, I like that one.
Oh, yeah. Odingen and I forgot what her husband's name, the two psychologists that came with that one. Yeah, but those are preloaded decisions. Mm-hmm. And those are amazing. Just the if-then statements of alone, where you say, if it is 10 in the morning, then I'm going to do 25 push-ups, right? So you specify the time, and then you specify the action. Writing that down in that format, it has like 50% improvement in the behavioral that you're actually going to do the behavior, which is unheard of for almost any intervention out there.
That's like pre-wiring or visualization for athletes. Like there's pre-wiring, I think, involved there. But anyway.
So your pre-decision making. Because there's visualization and then there's decision making. So when you're preloading decision with a if-then statement, you can then amplify that furthermore by visualization, where you're actually prepping the muscles involved. So then you're actually visualizing those steps that you're taking. And in her book, she actually she kind of talks about that more with I forgot what she had an acronym for, which I can't remember off the top of my head. And the last part for the writer is pointing to the destination. That's really having a clear where you're going to go. And I think that's short shift a lot of things is actually what do you want to do? Where is it that you want to be? What is it you want to accomplish? And being very firm and defined on that allows you, as the writer, that cognitive control aspect, to really have a vision of where it is that you're going. So the second one is the elephant, and recognizing that the elephant is by far the most powerful element, powerful piece of this triad here. Because this is big lumbering beast that that's going to work mostly on default. It's going to work mostly on habit. So the way you kind of do elephant change is they find the feeling, and you can either do that through dissatisfaction or, joy and action, creating the sense of that the elephant actually needs to move, that there is actually a problem that needs to be addressed. And that problem is fundamental. The biggest way to take is you start touching these core beliefs that without, you are a type of person, and as a type of person or in your community, you have to do this thing because that is who you are. We're talking about identity beliefs, which have a dark side, obviously, in politics, but to generate that feeling so that the elephant starts moving. The other thing they talk about is shrinking the change, and the shrinking the change is basically making it seem like where you want to be is much closer than where you are now. So rather than looking at things like through a telescope, right, or looking like and seeing it's way, way far out in the distances, how can you bring that change closer to you so that it looks like it's something that's going to be achievable? Not something, and that has to do with like clarity, being able to describe it and be able to identify those little bumps in between as short steps. So you're kind of like, the first step is this, and it's only, it's only 6 inches. It's not 6,000 feet or something like that. And then the last element in maneuver is kind of grow your people, which is a word of a herd. Is who are you? What are the other elephants that are trying to achieve this goal? So then now we have this herd mentality, and you kind of remember like those nature documentaries when they show like what are those not bison, but the things in Africa, they're like 2 billion of them, then they're running across the Serengeti plains. It's like, you stay out of that way because that's going to trample you. If you can get a herd of people going in one direction, it's going to carry you forward. And then finally, for the path, they talk about a lot about environment, and in similar finding, there's an overlap here with your herd is also making sure that you're in an environment where people are going in the same direction, because you are influenced by those around you. And as people around you tend to act, they tend to pull you forward. So if you want to exercise, make sure that you are in an environment where there are a lot of people exercising, and because that will influence you to actually take those steps as well. So awesome book. I forgot how much I really enjoyed it until I pulled it out, but and certainly if you're in healthcare and you're like frustrated with why everybody's unhealthy, and I keep getting them forms in our hospital, it keeps giving me pamphlets to help people. Pamphlets don't freaking work. They don't. It's like, it doesn't work. We got to look at things differently. And unfortunately, a lot of us never had the training, and we didn't learn about behavioral change, behavioral change in medical school.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of times I think we're told to, if you really need to get to understand your patient or what drives them and or the elephant. And I think the connection and being able to give them information, I think it's easier for them to fold that in with all the things you just talked about. But the way we're doing healthcare right now, where it's very transactional and very like arm lengths away, and people aren't really feeling heard, it makes it very difficult. So you have to create an environment too that facilitates that understanding of your patient and creates the right resources. And so I think a lot of people, especially primary care, really anybody, but definitely primary care. We've interviewed quite a few direct primary care physicians that have a better environment to facilitate a lot of these things, to help their patients implement change in a more successful way. So any last comments?
No, I was just going to say, I totally agree with that. And I think that's the biggest issue is if you're working in an organization, there's very little, it's much more difficult for you to implement these things in a way that's meaningful, right? If you're fighting the organization in order to do it, and ones I'm thinking was like just follow up, like being able to follow up with people and like do behavioral intervention and then follow up with them frequently. People can't get in contact with their doctors. Like last year when I tried to establish my primary, who was someone I knew and it was a friend, and I had literally communicated with directly, it took me 6 months to get the appointment because the phone numbers that I had to use, I couldn't actually get the actual clinic. And then the phone, because everybody's using these stupid centralized services. And I'm like, no. And they're like, oh, well, his panel's full. I go, I know his panel's full. I've talked to him. He's going to see me. And 6 freaking months. And I'm an insider.
Yeah.
So anyway, I guess that's a long way to say is if you can't get out of it, if you're really interested in this stuff, if you're a primary care doc, definitely look into direct primary care. And if you do, this is a book that you're going to want, because now you can start really implementing positive behavioral change with your patients. And that's awesome. Yeah,
totally agree. Yeah, I could go on another tangent, but we won't. You want to take us out, or you want me to take us out?
Sure, I will take us out. And for everybody joining us today, thank you for joining us for this episode of The Change Physician, where we discuss briefly about switch, how to change when things are when change is hard, by Chip Heath and Dan Heath. Again, really great book. They have some other really good books about decision making and things as well. If you're interested in those, follow us on any of our major podcast platforms, or you can join us at thechangephysician.com. And until next time, stay well.
Take care.